Alright guys, this is Chatterbox Reviews. Coming to you guys my review for the pilot episode of the new HBO comedy, The Franchise. Alright, so I was really looking forward to this new HBO comedy. I didn't hear much about it until the trailer dropped, I think, about maybe a month ago or so. And ever since then, you know, with the names behind it, the writers and some of the producers from Succession, along with Iannucci, I think that's how you pronounce it, Armando Iannucci, who's behind the thick of it, Veep, Avenue 5 recently, and a lot of other things. I'm not that familiar with him, but obviously the name, you know, and those projects that I have heard of, and I've seen a little bit of Veep here and there, and then obviously a name like John Brown, who's the creator of the show, who wrote some great Succession episodes and was kind of heavily involved in the writing for all 4 seasons, I believe, which I'll get to a little bit more on him. So yeah, the names behind this, and of course the premise really interested me. It's kind of this send-up or this satirizing of superhero movies, or kind of big blockbuster movies in general, probably. But this one, you know, specifically focuses on, you know, superhero a superhero movie that's being you know, made in production. So yeah, really fascinating. I think there's a lot to obviously criticize and kind of make some digs at in terms of you know, that space right now, especially where it's at now. Like maybe a few years ago it wasn't the right time, but now I think people are a little, you know, more open. Even, you know, fans of the comic book genre and those types of movies, I think they're a little more open these days to a little bit more of that criticism. And I'm not the biggest superhero fan, and so, you know, I think this show was really... This was something right up my alley, right? It's not like I hate superhero movies and that stuff. I've seen a few of them, but especially Marvel, I haven't seen really any projects that they've put out in, you know, years. And so I thought, yeah, this might be kind of an interesting look at what that is, and kind of criticizing it a little bit. So anyways, I'll get into my thoughts on how well that's done in this pilot, but love to hear your guys' thoughts on this pilot episode if you watched it. And if you haven't, I'm not going to get into too many spoilers. Talk, you know, just little points about the episode. This one hopefully won't be too long of a review anyways. So just kind of, you know, share my thoughts, my recommendation on whether this is checking it out, whether it's worth checking out or not. But yeah, love to hear your guys' thoughts if you have watched this one. And if you enjoy the review, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel as well. Would really appreciate that. So yeah, so we'll get into, you know, a little bit of behind the scenes of this show, and then I'll get to my overall thoughts. So the pilot here is directed by Sam Mendes, which is really interesting and kind of out of left field to me, because it's interesting. Like, he comes from basically the movie space mainly, right? I'm not sure if he's done other TV projects, to be honest, probably. But he goes to the movie space. You know, recently he made 1917, Empire of Light, which was kind of in the conversation but didn't get any Oscars. 1917 was a Best Picture frontrunner until Parasite came in with the upset. And then he did Skyfall and Spectre, Road to Perdition, American Beauty. So, I mean, he has had quite a career in the last, 2 decades or so, maybe more than that now, you know, since the 2000s, basically, right? So about 25 years now. He's been on a great run with a lot of great films, been a lot of, you know, these films getting Oscar nominations. He's been in that kind of world. So just kind of interesting that he comes to this series, and obviously, you know, he hasn't directed or been, I think, involved in any superhero type movies, but, you know, a movie like Skyfall and Spectre is, you know, kind of adjacent, right? Like, they're also satirizing, I think, you know, big blockbuster movies and productions in general, and so Skyfall and Spectre, I would say, pretty much fall into that. So I think this is really interesting that he's, you know, willing to do this and direct this, and he's a producer on the show as well. So yeah, really fascinating to see his name here. I did not expect that at all. But anyways, the show's created and written by, this pilot is written by John Brown, who I mentioned prior. He wrote episodes like Volter in Season 2 of Succession, Kill List with Season 4, great episode there. Lion in the Meadow, Season 3, the episode with Adrian Brody guest starred there. So those are just, I think he, you know, wrote maybe 2 more, maybe 5 total for Succession, but 1 in every season, so he was involved, I think, in every single season, you know, the writing room probably. But yeah, so he did some great work on Succession, obviously. Love Succession, it's easily in my top 10 now. TV shows of all time. So yeah, really, a name obviously that I, recognized right away when I heard that, and something that really made me want to check this out. So yeah, really interesting. And I'm not sure if he writes future episodes in this season. I think we're only getting 8 episodes total. So I am looking, forward to see if he does write more episodes. Right now, he's not listed for any more, so we'll have to see. But I think, I did really enjoy this episode, so I hope that he writes a few more here. And maybe we get more writers from Succession, too, that'll hop on. So, yeah, interesting. So, like I said, the premise here, it follows first AD Daniel, who's played by Himesh Patel, I believe, who I haven't personally seen in anything, but he's been in a lot of shows and movies that I've kind of heard of in the last, 5, maybe extend that to, probably 5 or 6 years about. At Station 11, I think he was in. So, anyway, so it follows him as the first AD, along with the crew and some of the actors in the production on the set of this franchise superhero movie. It's called Tecto, Into the Eye of the Storm, or something like that, is the fictionalized kind of movie. Obviously, it's not a real, superhero movie being, shot here in production. But, of course, it is kind of a stand-in to represent a lot of big, superhero movies and blockbuster movies, like I said. So it's obviously a satire of that concept and what's going on right now in Hollywood with those massive productions, those $200 million movies, or plus even now, that are being produced and put out, and the whole universe thing. And obviously, the show's called The Franchise, and so that's a big part to it. It's kind of, playing on the fact that all these movies have to be connected and all this stuff. So very much, it's pretty clear Marvel is definitely one of the places that they're kind of digging at here in the show. Okay, so in terms of my thoughts then, just off this pilot episode here so far, I think we'll start with the cast. So I think the cast are doing a really great job so far. Himesh Patel, like I mentioned, haven't seen him in anything, I don't think, but I've kind of, seen him in trailers and seen him around in stuff that I've, been kind of paying attention to from afar. And so I think he's really great. Daniel Bruhl is one of the bigger names, I'd say, in this cast, and he does a great job playing this kind of auteur director. And yeah, I think he's just doing a great job so far. Billy Magnuson, I thought, was a real standout. Him and Richard E. Grant kind of playing off each other as the actors in this first episode, at least. We'll see how big of a part they play, as it goes on and as they shoot more scenes and parts of this movie. But yeah, I thought they were really great. And the way they played off each other, Richard E. Grant, so good as this kind of, you see it a lot, right? It's like these older actors who have, done theater and been nominated for a couple of Oscars maybe or something like that. And now they're doing, superhero movie or a big blockbuster movie as like the villain, right? And they're getting probably a big paycheck for it. That's probably the main reason they're doing it. So I think that's just a perfect depiction of that, character. I'll get to this a little bit later. I think maybe a little cliche, but I think it's done really, really great. So yeah, really great job. And then Jessica Hines, I thought, was good too. Kind of in the script supervisor, I think, is her role. And she's kind of, assisting or kind of walking around with Daniel Bruhl's Eric, director character. So I thought she had some good lines in this episode as well. So yeah, I think all of the cast is doing great. Darren Goldstein, too, I want to mention him. He's been in a lot of things. He plays, like, the biggest asshole in basically everything I've seen him in. He was in American Crime Story, Impeachment, really big asshole in that show. And, yeah, there's been other ones, too, that I'm just forgetting right now. But, yeah, he's been great, and so I thought he was really good in this episode as well. Okay, so first, lots of laughs in this first episode, and I'll get to this in a moment, about the reviews that I've read about it, and just some other people's thoughts so far. But I thought this was hilarious. Like, I've seen some people saying, there's not many laughs, it's not that funny. I thought this was hilarious, this first episode. I got a lot of laughs, like multiple laugh out loud moments in this one. There's just some great ones. I just, at the very beginning of the episode, maybe 2 minutes in, Himesh Patel, Daniel, he makes the, somebody claims that the studio is on fire, and then ends up just being some props, and he's like, oh, okay, back to work, and they just kind of ignore it. And I think that really set the stage for, you know, the tone and what they were going for with the humor. So I got a big laugh out of that. I thought that was a funny joke, and then just the whole episode, it goes through. I think it's really, really funny. So yeah, and I think that's the ultimate goal of a 30-minute comedy, in my opinion. You know, I'm not expecting, and again, I'll get to this too, there is some cliches here for sure, and I've seen some of the reviews talk about that, but I don't need to see, like, I want to see some of that, and I want to see a little bit more, you know, maybe of a different side to some of these characters than we see in this episode, though I do really like the ending scene, kind of questioning, you know, why are they doing this? It seems so ridiculous and so awful, you know, and so I like the questioning of that. So I'd like a little more of that, but ultimately, did it make me laugh? Yes, it did. I thought this was a hilarious first episode, and for 30-minute comedy, I think that is enough to justify, you know, watching it. I really do. So yeah, I think the humor was similar to Succession to me. At times, obviously, it's not on the same level yet. You know, Succession took a little bit to get off the ground as well. So you know, perhaps this could meet that level, but I think it's similar. I think it is similar in the way, obviously, John Brown wrote for Succession. It was part of that group in the writer's room with Jesse Armstrong and Tony Roche and that, you know, the same group, right? And so you see that. I think that really comes out at times in this episode, especially that one scene where, you know, Darren Goldstein's producer character is walking with, I think her name is Dag, is that? Who's kind of our, you know, character, how we get introduced to this production where she's the new third AD on the project. And the one scene where they're just walking and she's just talking and trying to impress him and stuff. And he just is like, can you just shut the fuck up? And just moves on. Like, that's very Succession to me, where we have, you know, a character who just is so above at like what is going on around them, and they're just so vulgar and lashing out at people. So I thought, I mean, that's just a typical like Kendall line or a Roman line or something. So yeah, I think at times I thought the humor was really kind of on that, you know, similar level to Succession, or at least in the same vein there. So yeah, I got a lot of laughs out of this first episode. I really did. And again, for a 30-minute comedy, I think that is really enough to justify, you know, checking this one out for sure. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about this. You know, as the last couple thoughts here are kind of more on the, you know, behind the scenes and what, you know, what we're kind of satirizing here and that. So Maximum Studios is the name of the, you know, production company and the superhero kind of label that they use in the show here. Obviously, it's taking the place of Marvel Studios, right, for the series. It's pretty obvious, you know, and all the way that they're talking about it, how the franchise, how the universe also tie in. And I really like the scene where Darren Goldstein, the producer character, comes in and he says, you know, the fish people, we just genocided them. Like, they're all dead. And then, you know, the director says, I really want to keep the fish people in the movie. And he's like, no, like, the last movie, though, that is in before yours in the timeline, like, we killed them in that one. So you can't have the fish people anymore. So I don't know. I maybe I'm a sucker for this, maybe because I am critical of a lot of superhero movies and the way that all works with the universe all having to be tied in together. But I thought that was great. I really did. So it's pretty clear, right, that they're taking shots at Marvel, probably, you know, particularly Marvel, especially with Maximum Studios, you know, Marvel Studios. It's very similar. And so there's an interesting, you know, twist to this, right, because this is on HBO. It's a Warner Brothers production, which means DC, obviously, you know, DC and Warner Brothers, it's, you know, under that umbrella. And so, yeah, it kind of makes sense, right, that they're going so hard at Marvel. Obviously, Disney, you know, which is, you know, Marvel is under. And so they're kind of going at Marvel a lot, and particularly Marvel, because it's a Warner Brothers DC property. And so there is a bit of an odd thing here, right? Because they are really kind of taking shots at their direct competitor in the superhero genre. And I have seen some people, you know, that have a problem with this and say, yeah, it's pretty hypocritical, right? You know, for Warner Brothers, DC, to make a show like this and, you know, take shots at Marvel and kind of satirize that, you know, their kind of genre and their kind of, production of movies in their universe, well, they're also making superhero movies for $150 to $200 million, under the DC umbrella. And, their universe isn't quite as connected as Marvel because it hasn't really worked that well, right, over the time, and not even close to as successful in that regard to the way that Marvel's been able to do it, with Avengers and all the TV shows and everything. DC has always been very scattered. So, yeah, to me, though, it doesn't bother me that much. It really doesn't, because I think, except for, like, the Maximum Studios, and again, the way that they're kind of taking shots at the whole universe, connectivity and all that stuff, they are still, like, everything else pretty much in the show, or at least in this first episode that they're taking shots at, they are also guilty of. And so I don't think it's, they're not just completely, trying to place the blame on Marvel and saying, but DC and Warner Bros., we don't do any of this stuff. No, like, it does seem like it's critical of just the superhero genre and this blockbuster filmmaking in general. So, yeah, like, perhaps it's a little hypocritical that they're going, directly at their competitor. Not surprising, right? But perhaps a little hypocritical, but it just doesn't bother me that much. Also, with the way that they're going, they do want to have this connected universe and do the same things that Marvel has been doing now with James Gunn taking it over. So, like, even then, it's like, okay, well, in a year or so, all this criticism and satire will apply to them as well. So, I don't know. I think it's okay. You just have to be aware of it, right? And view it from that lens of, okay, this is Warner Brothers, DC, doing a production and clearly taking shots at their competitor, Marvel, Disney, and, as long as you are aware of it, I think, it's fine, and again, I think it's not to the point where it's just, like, clearly saying, they don't have any lines in here or anything, alluding to the fact that they're the only ones guilty of it and all this stuff, and other productions are fine. So it really is a general satire, I think, on just blockbuster filmmaking and superhero, genres, movies in general. So I think it's fine. I don't have a problem with it, but certainly it's something to acknowledge. And, I see that some people do have kind of an issue with this and think it's hypocritical, but it is what it is at the end of the day. And also, Warner Brothers is a massive, place, like HBO, and, you could even say that they literally have the TV show The Penguin on, that aired, like, literally the hour before the franchise came on in the same night. So, yeah, like, there's total, things like that. And maybe in the future episodes, they can actually take shots at themselves, or maybe, like, the competitors of Maximum Studios, right, within the show's world. So we'll see if they do that. If they don't do it, like, at all throughout the series, okay, maybe you can kind of, obviously criticize that and say, yeah, maybe they could have taken, a couple shots at themselves here and there. But to me, it doesn't bother me so much in this first episode. It really does seem general enough that they are willing to kind of take some shots at themselves and what they're doing as well. So, so just something to acknowledge there I want to point out. So, I do think, though, there could be some more nuanced satire, right? I don't think this first episode is the most nuanced. Of course, like I said, we get that scene at the end, which is kind of developing the characters a little bit more, and that stuff. But a lot of this stuff, is kind of surface level. I think it's really funny. I think the execution is great. But I think you could go a little bit deeper with some of this stuff. One of the things, though, I thought there was a little bit of nuance in this episode, because Darren Goldstein's character is representing a guy like Kevin Feige, right? Like, I think things like that are just deeper than, he's just a producer character that's an asshole. Like, every producer character, every producer is an asshole in the world of Hollywood, right? Like, that's kind of a trope, that's kind of a cliche, mostly because that's true a lot of the times, of course. But the way that they're able to do it, where, like, he's representing Kevin Feige, and there's a little bit something below the surface there, even the way, Darren Goldstein looks, he does look like Kevin Feige, right? And so I think that's interesting. I think, being able to go, okay, he's not just a typical asshole producer, like, he's literally playing kind of a fictional version of Kevin Feige, and they're kind of playing it out like, this is a version of maybe Kevin Feige that we're not familiar with. Maybe this is, the other kind of side of him and that kind of thing. So I think that's, we need a little more of that, as the series goes on. It'll be interesting to see. I have read some reviews that have really echoed this sentiment and said that there's really not a lot of nuance. Like it is kind of does remain on that surface level in a lot of the satire. So we'll have to see, right? I don't think the first episode is completely surface level. Like I said, I think the Feige thing, and there's a few other things that seem, pretty clever, the way that they were able to do it and kind of take shots at things and where it didn't just seem like, yeah, this is like the most cliche thing that you could do. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see how the rest of the series goes. Like I said, that's what these reviews that I've read have said, that even like later in the show, they do even less of it. And it is just surface level. So yeah, I mean, we'll have to see how it goes. Obviously, I'm just, taking a look at this first episode. And I do certainly think there could be more nuance to the satire. So we'll have to see, right? We'll have to see how the rest of the series goes. But that is definitely something that I noticed in this first episode. But to me also, like I said, like the execution is just so well done that it's really hilarious still to me. And so I think it's enough if the execution and the comedy, just the writing of the comedy is on the same level. Maybe they may not reach those kind of, nuanced heights of the satire. Even then, I think it would still be a good series, but to really get to that great level, obviously, I think they would need to go maybe a little deeper into some things and make some more kind of, a little, deeper nods to things that, fans or, people that are knowledgeable about Marvel and the kind of behind the scenes of a lot of this stuff would pick up on and really kind of appreciate and respect, the writers of the show, that they're putting stuff in there for us to recognize and for us to, realize and kind of pick up on. So yeah, overall, really impressed with this first episode. Definitely recommend it. If you're interested in the satire of superhero, films and blockbuster filmmaking, and you're, kind of familiar with the behind the scenes of this stuff and follow, development news and all this stuff with, TV shows and movies, but especially with Marvel and DC these days. I think there's, something here, for those people that are really interested. And like I said, something like the Kevin Feige thing, some people will notice for sure. You can really pick up on that. So yeah, really impressed. Got a lot of laughs out of this first episode. But like I said, we'll have to see how the rest of the series is. These reviews that have seen the full series, say certain things, so we'll have to see if they're right, and if I agree with them. But anyways, I do plan on doing a review for the full season once it's finished. So after the 8 episodes, I'll come back and review the whole first season, maybe some episodes. If I really get into this and it's great, I might do some episodes, but definitely just a whole season review I will do as well here on the channel. So subscribe for that if you're interested to see that later on. But anyways, that'll just do it then for my thoughts on the franchise, the first episode here. Definitely looking forward to the rest of the series and tuning in next Sunday for episode 2 then for that. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and we'll see you then in my next review.